Welcome to the conclusion of our three-part series on developing self-confidence. This is episode 8 of Becoming a Champion, and we are focused on mindset. In this special episode, part 3 here, we're going to talk about mindset in how you become a champion, how you truly develop self-confidence that carries you through every moment in your life and in your career. So let's just do a quick recap of where we started. We began with preparation, which is the hard work, and it's everything that you put in to build yourself up to do the work and earn it in preparation to become more confident. We talked last time about experiences and how through all of the different experiences that we gain, we can have learning moments that we are able to reconcile and make sense of and take with us what we learn and leave in the past all the things that don't benefit us. Today, we're talking about mindset. And let's just jump right in. Dr. Carol Dweck, Stanford professor, she was famous for coining the term having a growth mindset. And when I think about that and how I process that for myself and why it's so important for self-confidence, having a growth mindset comes back to being perseverant, being optimistic, having a positive outlook, which a lot of that ties back to optimism. Really that secret power of belief in yourself, that you have that will to power yourself forward. And as we talked about in the first couple parts of this series on self-confidence, mindset is both there in the end to keep you going after you've done that hard work and after you've learned from experiences, but it's also kind of what kicks off that cycle in a lot of ways. So I know that this is part 3, but it could just as easily be part 1 because the mindset is really that umbrella piece that's always there, that's always powering us forward. There are going to be bad times, and I'm very keen to say it's impossible to be positive all the time. But if you are optimistic, if you genuinely have a long-term strategic outlook in life, that things are going to work out in your favor, as the leader of a team, that things are going to coalesce and collectively your team is going to succeed and have long-term success. Things will work out in your favor. That is part of what powers a growth mindset. Growth mindset's always better when it's backed by the prep and experience, right? Preparation, setting goals, having those things in front of you that really, really matter. But a mindset that is geared on positivity and that is geared on outcomes that you can intangibly and tangibly tie yourself to is always best. I like to say that a mindset that builds confidence begins with speaking positive affirmations. And in this case, how do you build self-confidence? You always have to start within. Self-affirmation, speaking positive words over your life. And I'm going to come back to something later on both internal and external validation. But you start with affirmations in the same way that you as a leader can recognize and positively influence others and show appreciation toward others. Begin locally. All of these concepts, all of these things that I'm teaching you and we're talking about here about emotional intelligence, they really do begin with you. Self-awareness leads to empathy, but it starts at home. So speaking positive affirmations over yourself, believing that you're going to succeed, writing things out, saying them, even striking an accountability commitment by communicating them to other people can drive a powerful accord with yourself around what you hold yourself accountable. So always remember to write and speak out positive affirmations. Ultimately, what empowers a growth mindset is knowing that adversity is going to strike. So I always like to say, what's in the way is the way, kind of a famous saying. Don't let your ego get in the way, but don't let challenges, adversity, obstacles, or even mistakes that you or your team have made get in your way. Look at those things, identify and recognize them, acknowledge them for what they are, but then develop a plan, which comes back to preparation. You'll know from experience how to build that plan, what you need to do to lead to a solution, to lead to a better outcome. But then it's that mindset that whatever is in your way and whatever is in front of you is something that not only that you have the ability to overcome, but that you have the ability to thrive in powering through it with a great attitude. And all of that is guided by that long-term optimism and belief that you're going to achieve the goals and the results that you set for yourself. Another big thing that leads to having a great mindset, you can think of these things as a trio that you can recap every single day with. And I want to highlight these things here for you on the screen. Number one thing that you really did well that day. It doesn't have to be a specific result. It doesn't have to be the specific achievement of a goal, but some action, even if it's a thought, just something that you did well that day that you can look at objectively and say, I did that well. One thing that you're grateful for, a grateful mindset empowers a positive mindset. So if you're grateful, you're going to be more positive. You're going to be more believing. If you are more grateful for having so many wonderful things in your life, you're going to be more confident. And then think about one specific way that you experienced growth. That may tie back to what you did well, and it may tie back to just even having a gratitude practice in the first place. So mindset takes time. And you might notice that all three of these things that I just recapped, they're going to take time, but not a lot of time. It might just take you 5 or 10 minutes, and it might be a great way for you to recap the end of your business day or the end of your day as a person later on before you're going to bed, in the evening before you get too tired. Take the time to keep track of these things and lock them in to make sure that you are doing them. They make an enormous difference in building a positive mindset. Something else that I often find helps to lead to a growth mindset is being able to identify people that you admire and respect, and maybe even whose success that you want to earn. So having something, not just something, but having someone, if you will, that's in front of you that might even be a little bit farther along on the journey of where you're trying to get to than where you are. Identifying that person and highlighting their greatest attributes, the things that they do well, the things that you want to model that they do well when they're at their best. And that's something that I find is super, super important. And also, another key aspect, we talked about things like gratitude, recapping your days around how you've grown, things that you've done well, but being able to come back as well to celebrating your own wins and affirming, which is kind of where we started, all the things that you do well. Obviously, you want to be able to do those for others when you're leading a team, when you're leading an organization. If you're an entrepreneur just starting up and trying to rally people around you, you want to empower people to recognize them for what they do well and to celebrate those wins. And so those are a couple of different examples around mindset. Mindset is something that every one of us can have. It's truly equal opportunity, and it's just a matter of shifting perspective and changing things. And a lot of it comes back from an emotional intelligence standpoint to self-awareness. It's having moments throughout your day, throughout your week, where you can shift the perspective and you can kind of shift the paradigm around how you see yourself. You might be doing great, but if you think deep down inside that you're struggling, it's going to show up in each moment with how you show up for yourself, but how you also show up for others. Now, I'm not telling you to paint a false narrative for yourself. I am telling you to be honest about what you are doing every day, but to always, in the present, but to always believe and have an outward, optimistic outlook toward the things that you are aiming to do and the things that you are aiming to achieve. One other concept that I wanted to get in with you, and it comes back to validation, because I get asked this question a lot when I'm speaking to audiences. You begin with internal validation. You begin with having some of that end of the day assessment and reflection, and you can be honest with yourself around validating yourself around things that you've done well, areas that you want to improve, because part of what makes a mindset great is hunger. It's that desire for more, that hunger for more, to be better than the person that you were yesterday. So that hunger, that internal validation of knowing what you did well, how you want to get better and improve, but being able to recognize for yourself your accomplishments. And I'll share a quick story for you. I've written 3 books, and you might be familiar with The Champion Leader and Emotional Intelligence for the Modern Leader. My first book, The Value of You, is a book that still to this day that I'm extraordinarily proud of. It was from the heart about how to build a foundation on core values. And I'll never forget the words of my mom, who, when I was struggling in the early days of being an entrepreneur, my mom would say to me, Chris, all you need to do is go back and read your own words, read the pages of your own book to remind yourself of just how well you really are doing. And that one's always hit home to me. And obviously, The irony here is that came from someone else to kind of get me to see that, but it's been instruction for me to internally validate myself, to look at all that I've accomplished, to look at the things that I've done well, lives that I've changed. And sure, you want to be mindful of not letting that get too much to you in terms of ego, if you will, but there is something to be said in life for internally validating yourself, for propping yourself up, for being very proud of the goals that you've achieved, what you've accomplished, and how you've helped people, even steps that you've taken every day in the process that you can reflect back on. External validation is extremely important. And for those of us, and I'll include myself in here, that rely on the affirmation or the respect of others, where it's wonderful to hear that we've been appreciated, that we've been recognized. Those things do matter, and it's why seeking feedback matters so much. And in some instances, it's going to be positive, and in other instances, it's going to be more constructive. And I simply ask that external validation doesn't just have to be what you did well. Be open to feedback that opens your eyes to the ways that you need to improve and get better as a person. Internal validation always matters most, and that is ultimately what empowers a winning, emotionally intelligent mindset. But never downplay or underestimate external validation, either from a friend, from a colleague, from a family member. Being able to be shown appreciation and recognition and to be validated for the path that you're on, the leadership style that you have, what you're doing to uplift others in your community and on your team that you're leading. So thinking about validation, we come back and think about all the different aspects that inspire and empower a growth mindset. Core value-wise, optimism, perseverance, faith, and belief in yourself. These are the things that build that final pillar of our three-part series on self-confidence. So we started with preparation. Part 2 is experience. Today in episode 8. Part 3, mindset. Do what you can every single day to raise the lever in each one of those areas, and now you have the tools to do it. So I hope that you can come back to this awesome 3-part series on developing self-confidence here on becoming a champion. I'm Christopher D. Connors. We'll see you next time.